Welcome to Homeroom, the podcast, presented by One Church Home, featuring different guests, hosts, and topics focused on building a solid foundation rooted in the Word of God. This podcast was created for those who desire to grow in the will and ways of Jesus. OCH believes in the God-ordained call for believers to commit to their local church. We ask that you would only consume these resources as supplemental and not as a replacement for your local church community. Let's jump into the conversation.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome back. We are in session 4 now, which is amazing. And we are with Renée Rizzo. I'm Pastor Jeff Boyet. And we're just going to hit some of the topics in this one are how to get involved. Like how do we, there are a lot of people that are like, okay, you got me. We've seen 3 other episodes. You've got me. Now what can I do and how do I get involved? So Renée, why don't we start with how would somebody get involved? Let's start with social media.
Yeah. I would say social media is the place I would like to be the most cautious. I think that we always need to speak the truth in love about this topic. And when I'm on social media, the first person I'm always thinking about is a woman who's been through an unplanned pregnancy and a woman who's been through an abortion. And so I'm always filtering it through that lens. More than any other person, she's the person that's my priority. And so I would say speak the truth in love. If you've got facts or information, be happy to share it. Be happy to take conversation offline. And so really make sure that what you're sharing is reputable. Try not to use words that murder and kill. Those are really strong, triggering words. I try to even stay away from right and wrong. Sin. I mean, I feel like the truth alone is strong enough. And so say it or present it. But then if a conversation starts to happen in your comment field, you can tell the difference between someone who just wants to start an argument with you and someone who's curious. And I would say engage in curious conversations. Don't try to defend the arguments. And I would also say use social media and then quickly take it off social media. So when I usually post something or share something or respond to something, I will say, I would love to have this conversation, either FaceTime, Zoom, or in person over coffee. This way we can really get a chance to understand each other and unpack it. So less is more, keep it simple.
Social media always reminds me of like bullhorn evangelism because we can literally, and I'm not saying like, I'm not saying that maybe the Lord's calling people to bullhorn evangelism, but it's real easy for us to say things that are more hurtful because we can just turn away from the conversation.
Right.
And so one of the things I wanted to ask on that, how do we know that the information and the facts, I mean, you've helped us in these sessions for sure, but how do we know if somebody is presenting something online that we may not have heard you say or we may not have learned that? Like how can we fact check that? How do we know that it's true?
That's really great. Definitely reach out to me, for goodness sake. My handle on Instagram is BMHS Coach, and then I'm on Facebook at Renée Rizzo. And I would be happy to data check that with you. The other thing that I can tell you about is one of the things that I'm working on is a project called Life, Love, and Other Things. And it's going to be a website that's going to be available by this summer. And that's exactly one of the things that I'll be doing is presenting good, solid information for young women, for parents, for youth leaders. And we're going to be not just linking to like what I'm saying to be true, but I'm going to be linking to white papers and bylines. And so you can really fact check that. So that will be available this summer. But in the meantime, please check with me because unfortunately, 90% of what's out there in print definitely has a slant. That's not in our favor.
Right, for sure. And you had mentioned family and parents, and let's transition to that. How do we engage family and friends in these types of situations?
I always feel like I wait for good opportunities to come up and talk about what life means. And certainly enough goes on in the world and on the media or on a TV show. And so, recently I just saw a couple episodes where the young women were taking an abortion pill. And so if I'm around a teenager, that's a great opportunity to say, well, hey, we just saw that in that episode. Do you have any questions for me? Would you like to talk about that? The biggest recommendation I would make to parents seeing this is a lot of times parents say to me, my kids know they can come to me. They know they can tell me everything. And I'm here to tell you that ain't true. I would love to tell you that even in the closest relationships, kids feel really like they don't want to disappoint their parents. And so parents are really going to have to specifically say to their children, look, I understand when it comes to either sex or alcohol, pregnancy, drugs, there's a lot of things that you might do or be tempted to do. And I need you to know that I'm your safe person to come to. My initial reaction, if I'm blindsided, might be anger or fear.
Right.
But you know I love you and there's nothing that you can say that's going to separate me. And or if you don't feel comfortable coming to me, here's a trusted friend.
Right.
And so make sure you know who you trust your child to go to if it's not for you. So I would definitely say for parents, start that conversation early and continue to have it with your friends and family. Again, you never know what they've already been through. So if the topic comes up at the dinner table or at a holiday, I would say start with listening, see where their heart is, see what's on their mind, see what's causing any pain or anger. Usually if you hear anger is masking some fear or some pain or some shame. And so try to stay away from the anger, go, gosh, I feel like that's really tapping into something. Did something happen that you want to share?
Yeah.
So listen first and speak less.
And I'm sure there are scenarios that you've dealt with in conversation or in counseling sessions where maybe a young lady has gone through a termination and didn't realize that she would have had the support of her parents, and it's just too late at that point. And so speak to that. I mean, just how does a young person who is getting ready to make a decision that they're going to regret, how do they approach mom and dad?
Yeah. I mean, so if she's already had the abortion and she feels like she can't not talk about it, and she wants to talk about it with her parents, this is where if parents and children talk about this ahead of time, kind of like a code word, like, Mom, Dad, I'm about to tell you something. Like, we've already decided our code word is coconut. And when I say the word coconut, it already tells the parents to kind of go, I'm about to hear something really hard. And my initial reaction is not going to be to yell or scream. You know what I mean? So I think kind of having a code word really helps, and then kind of sharing it. And so I would say share it openly, share it honestly. Try not to feel like you need to defend it right away. And parents, try not to feel like you need to fix it right away. But if the young girl is already pregnant and she's not made that choice, if she can't go to the parents first, definitely contact her local pregnancy center or a trusted friend. But I think when parents encounter or an adult encounters a young woman who's either post-abortive or in an unplanned pregnancy, the things I always try to say first, no matter what, when they're about to tell me something really hard, and this also gives me time to find the next answer, I always say, thank you so much for sharing that with me and trusting me with that information. Yeah. I am so sorry you went through that, or I'm so sorry you're going through that. What do you need most? And so those three answers give you enough time to think in your head, like, oh my goodness, what do I say? What do I say? So it kind of lets them know, thank you so much. Yep. I'm so sorry. What do you need most right now? And if they say, I don't know, then say, okay, let's walk it out and let's start to unpack it. You didn't get here overnight, so we're not going to make a decision overnight. And so I think that's the other thing is listen a lot, love a lot, remind her that she's worthy, valuable, and loved no matter what she's done or no matter what she will do. The last thing we want to do is change who God is in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And I want to, you and I have talked a little bit about this before, but I'm a dad of 2 daughters, and I have a close relationship with my daughters, and I feel like they would come and share things with me. What about those dads, and this is where you and I have talked about it before, where the father or the male figure almost feels like this is not for me. You and I, how we talked about it was just emceeing this sort of conversation to go like, I would love to help out any way I can, but I sort of feel like the interviewer should be a female because, and I've had that my whole life. Like I've felt that, and I have been fed that lie that the male figure is not important in this discussion, and so specifically for the father, for the dad, how does a dad?
Yeah. So good, so good. And I know I talked about this at the front end with Shane, like why men even get to have a voice in this conversation, but specifically when fathers are involved. What we know to be true is young men and young women are most impacted by the role of the father.
Yes.
And so I think the first thing that you have to remind her is that she's loved and valued and nothing is going to break that relationship. I think disappointing dad is probably harder than disappointing mom. So the immediate response is with love. I had a girlfriend who told me that her dad was a pastor, and she was so scared to tell her father that she was pregnant. She pretty much crawled across the room and was like clinging at his leg. She was a 20-year-old girl clinging at her dad's calf because he was a pastor and she adored him. And he just looked down at her, and I love that his first words were, he put his hands on her face and he said, "I love you. That is not changed in this moment. I will always love you, and your Father in heaven loves you."
Yeah.
No matter what else we discuss or say, know that first. And so I know the world is trying to tell everybody that it's her body, it's her choice.
Yeah.
But I've been in this industry for 20 years. Unless the guy is a total jerk, she does not want to be left alone in this topic. She needs her partner to be involved, and she sure wants her dad involved.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, those relationships are unsafe, but that's not what you're asking me about. And so we would know better on that. But if this is a trusted relationship, dad accepting her, loving her, and supporting her is probably one of the most important things that could happen.
Oof, that hits home. And so then let's talk about engaging a young woman who is in a pregnancy. How are we? What's the best way to engage? And I guess probably. Maybe you're the friend who has heard, she doesn't know if she wants to have the baby, or that she's not married, or that there's an opportunity for a termination of pregnancy. How do we engage someone who's pregnant?
Yeah, so like I said, I always start with, thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry. How can I help you? But the next thing I usually try to go in right now is like, okay, I know you want to get out of this mess really fast because it hurts really hard. But no matter which choice you make, you're going to live with this choice the rest of your life. So, when you bought your first car, you decided where to go to college, you took your first job, you did not make any of those choices emotionally or in a rush. You slow down and you gathered information. So what I'm going to help you do is help you make an informed choice. And so I don't even know. And so if you feel like I have no idea what she's supposed to do, then it's not hard to Google and put pregnancy center in your city, and you will get a local pregnancy center that is equipped to do that. And you're going to say, hey, we're going to book this appointment at a pregnancy center. I will go with you if you want. They will help you unpack all of your options, all of your choices, all of your concerns, and we're going to walk this out. And so we don't have to make a decision right now, but I sure want you to make an informed decision. That is the only way you're going to be empowered, and you'll be able to live with this decision 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
Right. Okay, so let's move kind of forward to we have an audience that is like, okay, Renee, you got me.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get involved in some way. I'm a little afraid.
Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant.
Yeah.
So let's talk different ways. Let's talk how would somebody get involved politically?
Yeah. So there's a lot of organizations, like obviously Right to Life is a national organization, and they also have Right to Life chapters in every single state. If you are a college student, there is Students for Life, and there is a national chapter, and there are local chapters as well. And so those are great ways to do it. And then you can also find out in your community who's running for office and find out what their platform is. And you can help in a local election. I think we always think it needs to happen politically at the national level, but we're about to be in a season where things are going to be happening much more in your local and state level. And so find out what people are doing. So I feel like nationally and politically, those are the best ways to start But if you are like, gosh, Renee, there's just so much information, or I'm hearing this and I live in a different state than you, I would say national organizations like Heartbeat International, CareNet, March for Life, Save the Storks, Focus on the Family. Those are well-renowned organizations that you can find out what's going on nationally, and then they might be able to help you at the local level. And then, of course, if you're local, the most important place that you can get involved in is with your local pregnancy center. As I've mentioned earlier, there are 4,500 of them in the country. Wow. Many of them are either attached to Heartbeat, some of them are attached to CareNet, and some of them are independent. The one I served for 18 years was an independent. And so all you have to do is literally Google pregnancy centers in your city, and you will find a list of them and vet them. We were all independently owned and operated. So just because you liked one in California doesn't mean you're going to like the one in Idaho.
Right.
And so find out what their mission, vision, values, find out about their services, find out about their volunteer program. And so vet them before you decide if I'm going to support them with my time, talents, and treasures. But that's the beautiful thing. Pregnancy centers have been around for 30 years already doing this. We help women from the moment they think they might be pregnant up until that child's 2.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways to support. But then I also realize, you guys, most of the time, if we're going to care about life, womb to tomb, everybody wants to help her when she's pregnant and has that baby, but no one wants to help the single mom when her kid is screaming in Target at, 3 years old. And so look at your local Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And, in Franklin, I love, Franktown and Open Hearts, and I love, Nicole C. Mullins' group. And so find the areas that are helping single mothers or young children up until the teenage years. Because if we care, and I already told you that the father figure role matters, if she's a single mom and the father is not in the picture, and you're a guy listening to this, I want you to go volunteer your time and be the dad, be the role model that child needs.
Yeah. So when you talk about vetting, what are some red, just real quick, what are some red flags that we need to look out for to be like, okay, these are...
and it's both ends of the spectrum, right? Like, you don't want to pick an agency, in my opinion, where you feel like it's coercive language, where you feel like it's a lot of bait and switch. And so you see language that it makes it look like they're trying to mislead her and manipulate her to come in the door. I kind of feel like pregnancy centers have great services that they offer, and they don't need to hide or manipulate to get clients in the door. They just offer great services. So I would look for that. But then I would also look for services, especially if it almost seems too religious, too self-righteous, too condemnation-y. Especially if you're trying to bring a client in, because the vast majority of clients coming in the door, there are some that have turned away from God, feel afraid of God, and so, or we're not sure where she's at, and so shoving Jesus down her throat in that first visit's really not going to help her in the process, and it's just not being the gospel. I think that Jesus was so good at knowing his audience, and how he spoke to the Pharisees versus his disciples versus the woman at the well was really different. And so look for that. Like, when you read the website, you will hear language that sounds welcoming or judgmental.
Right. It's that bullhorn evangelism again.
There you go. Back to that.
So let's sort of real quick wrap it up. What are some passion projects? What do you have going on right now?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm super excited about is I had a dream with one of our vendors at my other nonprofit, and we wanted a way to be able to kind of go up against Goliath in this topic. There's $1 billion industry that is sending one message, and we kind of want to, how do we get all this information together? So we are working on a website called Life, Love, and Other Things. It's going to be out summer of 2022. It's going to be a place where there's a ton of education, back to where you were talking to me about earlier. We're going to have really good topics, even things like, was it consent? How do I date safely online? So, picture Teen Vogue, healthy, good, biblical, but factual content that your pastors will want to go to, parents will want to go to. We're also going to have a section for scholarship opportunities. If there is a pregnant woman working and succeeding in her program at her pregnancy center, but she needs an extra $1,500 for something, we want to be able to get her a scholarship. And then finally, we're creating a directory that's going to include all the pregnancy centers in the country and all the nonprofits pregnancy centers would refer to. So that's Life, Love, and Other Things. It's a nonprofit. I would love for people to support it and or learn more about it or ask me about it. But
Fantastic.
I'm super excited because we need to unite as a community.
Absolutely.
Well, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Because I know people listening to this might be thinking, how do I get my church involved? Because my pastor doesn't like to talk about this. We're trying to stay outside of the politics. We don't want to offend anybody. And we're in this culture where nobody wants to offend anybody.
Yeah.
And I know you've been so receptive to me talking to you about it. What advice would you give folks if they want to reach out to their church?
Well, I would say the first thing, if this is an uncomfortable conversation, one of the, and I'm going to say simplest things we can do, but I'm going to come back against that is pray. We can pray, right? We can pray for this big decision that's getting ready to happen, the Roe v. Wade. We can pray for our nation and what stems from the aftermath of that. And I'm going to say something, and this is not going to sound great, but I think that we as Christians have been so we've gotten so used to the fact, or at least trained our minds, or we've learned as we have grown up that we can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
We can't do anything about this. This is
Too big.
government. This is too big for us. There's no way. We've even taken it out of the hands of God, right? And so I think we need to give it back to Him.
Yeah.
And I said earlier, like one of the simplest things we can do is pray. But I think Renee, that you would believe too, is that if we're doing it right and we're taking it to Him passionately, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, and we are undone by it. And so that's one of the things that the church can do. Pray for state leadership. We need to be praying for the president and the administration of the White House, and just for a miracle to happen. And I know we believe that it's going to happen. And then pray for the nation. And I said before, in that aftermath of sadly, if it goes the way we don't want it to go, I don't think it's going to cause as big of an uproar as if it goes the other way, right? Yeah. If this is overturned, we as Christians are going to be hammered, right? Yeah. We are going to hear it. Yeah. We're going to be attacked. And so let's start praying right now. Yeah. Let's pray for the young ladies who are in a place where they feel like they're just backed into a corner and they have to make this decision. Let's pray through, as we spoke to it earlier, and it touched my heart. Let's pray for the dads and for the moms that are part of their lives. And so prayer is one way. I think another way that the church can help, and I think we're really going to have to step up in a big way, is to consider and to pray about and to be a part of fostering and adoption. And we are as a church are approaching that in a way, and foster May is Foster Parent Month, and so there are conversations that we can have that way. Either you can reach out to me as a pastor, we can sit down and talk about those things, or we can push them your way, and you can lead us in a direction as well. And then the last thing, you kind of touched on it. This is one of those things that I have a heart for is just conversation, just simple conversations. When we are passionate about something, we get loud about it, and that loudness can turn into anger, especially if somebody is butted up against us. It doesn't agree with what we think, and I think that's dangerous. And I think that is an opportunity that we're missing. We've mentioned it several times in this episode, but when I say bullhorn evangelism, I envision walking down the street and on one corner seeing a guy with a bullhorn shouting at you in anger. And on another one, a man standing there peacefully having conversation with the Bible in his hand. And I think if you look at that visually, you're going to see there's going to be more people that are wanting to have peaceful conversations than listening to the bullhorn evangelism, which I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying that he's not called to do that or she's not called to do that. Right. But just, the peace of the gospel, the good news of the gospel, the good news to me comes in a peaceful conversation and not yelling, "You're yelling good news at me." Yeah. And so I think conversations, we just gotta really watch what we're saying and how we're approaching it. And again, if any of these things are things that our listeners or our viewers are like, I really want to get involved, but before I do anything, I want to talk to somebody. We're gonna push them towards you, right?
Okay, sounds good.
And so just real quick, give your email address real quick.
Yep, it is Rizzo@ReneeRizzo.coach. And so I think that would be even the safest way for those of us that are listening to this, and we both attend the same church, and you're thinking, okay, but what about our church? We're ready, let's go.
Right.
For now, start with me, knowing that I'm working directly with the leadership team, and we are formulating specific ways for our own specific church to be getting involved. And I will be happy to funnel you in the right direction.
Sounds awesome.
That was so good. Thank you so much for letting us do this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.